host. I am a podcaster on Anchor FM, which is part of Spotify, and we are interviewing London ethereal trap artist Jazz Sirius, right? Or Sirius?
Jazzy Sirius.
Sirius, Jazz Sirius. So, you call yourself an ethereal trap artist, which is interesting. And then you also are a singer, a rapper, and a spoken word artist. And we're going to get into the questions we sent you ahead of time.
Yeah.
So when did you first get into music? When did you, what age did you decide you wanted to be in music, or is this something that came about later in life?
I mean, I've always been quite into music. My dad's a musician and my mum's an artist. And I went to state school in London, but I was quite blessed in that the headmistress's husband was like an incredible pianist and musician, and ultimately everyone in my school had to learn an instrument, had to be a part of the choir. So I started writing and getting into music at a really young age. We were singing like the Beatles songs and Aretha Franklin from like primary school age. So I've been influenced by music for a long time, but around 11, kind of secondary school age, I kind of went away from music and thought it was like an impossible dream until about 5 years ago when I started writing again.
That's interesting. So is it like, and I started, I'm in my 50s, everything was based on being like garage band, and everything was guitar, drum, kind of like rock oriented, or punk rock oriented. And now, because we have DJs, we have EDM, people can get a computer, they can get a MIDI keyboard. So is it the change in music where people can do these different types of music that kind of brought you back in?
Well, I was actually, so after going through a bit of a kind of dark period in my life, my health wasn't so good, and I just had various things going on that led me into I had a bit of a breakdown when I was 22, and I went to Ibiza. I planned to go traveling, but I ended up in Ibiza, and I met a lot of different creative people there, and I started singing, kind of like just messing around singing in jams and things like that. And a couple of people said to me, you can actually really sing, and I was like, no, I can't sing, doubting myself. And then eventually ended up being asked to sing in a band over there that were looking for a singer. So I actually started singing again with like the whole kind of live music thing. Also, my dad was very much into punk rock. That was his vibe. He was the lead singer in various punk rock bands. And so I've now kind of gone more towards using the electronic stuff in production and working in studios that way. But initially I was playing in a band. It was a six-piece band. So we had like electric guitar, bass, percussion, drums, didgeridoo, which made it a bit different. It was like a crazy rave rock orchestra in Ibiza. It was pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, I was listening to your song Access Denied. And then I was listening to Gotta Have Your Love, and I was like, wow, there's I know you're collaborating with different folks on those.
Yeah.
But because Access Denied is kind of a song. It's a song structure versus Gotta Have Your Love is more like an EDM kind of rave trap type of structure.
Yeah.
And I know they're working on your new record, and you've got this genre that you've kind of name checked as ethereal trap. So I'm wondering, is it going to be a mixture of those styles or something totally different?
So basically those two tracks, like you said, are both collaboration tracks. I'm so influenced by so much different music. Like I say, my dad was like punk rock. I grew up with that element, a lot of like rock and roll, a lot of Pink Floyd kind of vibe, and David Bowie, and that kind of all that kind of music. But I've also been heavily influenced by the dance scenes and UK festivals, drum and bass, house music, dance floors, etc. And so the track Access Denied is a collaboration with a guy called Mark Fox, who is an old friend and also quite recent to music also, or at least seriously, only in the last few years that he's been properly producing. And J. Colo, the other guy that I did Got to Have Your Love with, also an old friend. He's been producing a bit longer. But yeah, ultimately, I just wanted to jump on some different genres and explore that, different aspects of myself. And I feel like artists are very much kind of pigeonholed, you know, like people, you know, a lot of managements and labels, they want you to be one thing, and do one thing. I'm sure, as you know. And it's like, my thing is too big for the box. I don't want to be stuck in one box. You know, I think a lot of great artists do kind of take people on a journey with their music. The main project, however, is what I'm now calling Ethereal Trap. It's probably the best description I can give of it. So that stuff's going to start coming out this year, and probably the debut album towards the end of the year. Which is a slightly different sound, but just sorry to cut you off, but just to conclude and make that make sense. So Mark Fox, who I've done Access Denied with, he is primarily a tech house producer, but he's also a very talented guitarist, and just in general his production skills are amazing. So he's actually ended up co-producing my upcoming project, which, so there are definitely elements of electronic sound in there, but there's also elements of like kind of psychedelic rock and trap and rap and soul and other things as well, and an ethereal vibe, which I can't help but bring to it all.
So that's where you get the Ethereal Trap. So it's gonna, so with your collaborator or conspirator, how you say it. So it's like, so this project with Mark is gonna be in the vein of Ethereal Trap, which is kind of still genreless because you're kind of pulling all these other things, because you were talking about how you're influenced by Pink Floyd and these other bands, you know. And that's interesting, because what I kind of agree with you. Well, I totally agree with you. Because what I call my music is expansive sound, because I like to bring in like Sun Ra. I like to bring in punk rock. I like to bring in bands like Yes and Genesis, and then a little funkadelic and Hendrix and stuff. So, and people always want to pigeonhole me. So, well, you know, what are you, electronic? And I'm not exactly like a modern electronic band, because I'm kind of pulling back to guys like, you know, at 55, like Sun Ra.
You
know, so that's not exactly today. So yeah, I understand. Like, it's hard to get, you know, you want to kind of, I have been talking to a lot of artists lately that are kind of name checking their own genre. They kind of create, they're saying something like, way you said, ethereal trap. Other people come up with like new terms on existing concepts. So I think that's cool. I think that's where you need to be. You kind of need to know what you're doing, what you want to do.
And I think it's, you know, there's music, I don't know, like more and more into kind of eclectic different genres nowadays, you know, like you don't find that many people that like only like one type of music. I mean, sure, there's still subcultures, but more and more we are, you know, people will love rock, but they'll also love jazz, and they'll also love a bit of soul, and then they'll love that pop song. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's difficult to try and,
well, the blend, I think, is the core. It's like a reason why everybody who's a musician, we have our heroes, we have our references and our influences, right? So everybody will say, oh, I was inspired by the Beatles, because Beatles kind of created modern pop music. But then it's like, if you get a little bit psychedelic, it's like, well, you're doing a little Pink Floyd, or you're doing this, or you're doing a little Jefferson Airplane. But it's like everything that's out there, everybody's kind of blended it and kind of taken it, you know, from the blues people, you know, you get back to the original blues, or, you know, you get the Lead Belly and all, you know, and Robert Johnson. It's like all rock kind of goes to, you know, this like all jazz, like Coltrane, Davis. It's like, so there's always going to be somebody that you kind of pull from, but 100%. You make it your own.
100%. It's remediation, really, at the end, you know. It's just like the evolution of it. And I think now we've got so many different kinds of music, and especially with electronic music and the way that we can produce things nowadays, it's like there's so many different options. And yeah, I think we're constantly being inspired by different things, and fusion really is like the way forward, you know.
It's interesting. So it's like, what do you like when you work with producers? Are they pretty much creating their own beats, or is it kind of hodgepodge of like, granular synthesis or sampling or creating your own beats, because so many people don't want to get copyright strikes anymore. There's a lot of people, building like their own beats using drum machines or using DAWs to create their own sounds. And so do you find like when you're working producers that you're trying to create like original stuff, or are you still like using a lot of clipping, or is it just anything you feel like to service the song?
So I mean, I work with a lot of different people in different kind of situations. I do love to use as much kind of live instruments as possible. And there's going to be a lot of live elements in my upcoming releases. But in terms of the project with Mark Fox, he's just really, which is bringing to life this whole ethereal trap kind of vision that I've had for years. He's very good at, I mean, we use a little bit of everything. We use some samples. He can make his own beats. Some tracks have been totally just put in by him. Other stuff, we've got stuff, samples and loops and, and then try to put live stuff over it. And it's kind of a mixture, to be honest with you. A little bit of everything. This new project is crazy, though. It's got all kinds of sounds. Like, there's all different Atmos sounds in there. I've got, like, pigeons and whales and Harley Davidsons and, like, just all kinds of mad sounds.
That's field recording. Like, if you go back to Pink Floyd, they're kind of famous. Yes, in Pink Floyd, they did all these field recordings.
Yeah.
That you actually, and Pink Floyd's real famous for, like, their conversational. People actually having conversations and them looping it in. And then, yes, they went out to a forest and they taped the forest.
Yeah, I love it.
It brought it in. Yeah, that kind of thing. A lot of modern bands are actually learning how to do that again. It's kind of like a 1960s thing or late in mid 70s, but all that progressive rock stuff seems to be coming back.
Yeah.
People are doing a lot of things that maybe they don't realize, but like Yes, Genesis, all these bands did stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. And so there's this mixture now, like you said, of people using samples, granular synthesis, old analogs, people playing live instruments on top of samples, and it's, what's cool I like is like when a band takes a sample and then they make it like unrecognizable to the original sample.
Exactly.
That they clip it up so much or they splice it so much that then it's like it's just they made it their own,
Yeah, this is something that Mark is very, very good at doing, which is just like blows my mind because I'm definitely not a producer yet. But
a lot of hip hop producers did that. If you go back in the day, like the old
you've
school
gone all alien again. Sorry, say that again.
A lot of hip hop producers. Can you hear me?
Can't hear you, babe. Sorry.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, now good.
Yeah. So hip hop producers were kind of famous for using like MPCs and all kinds of old samplers and really chopping up, like the Bomb Squad.
Yeah.
Or De La Soul were very, and even like a guy like if you get into MF Doom was great at like taking kind of obscure samples and like vocal, actual, used to take cartoons of the Fantastic Four and then take these 1960s cartoon dialogue and throw them into like hip hop.
Yeah, I love it.
And that kind of stuff is just really, it's really cool. And so I love anybody that's doing that kind of innovative work. And it sounds like for this new ethereal trap album that project you're working on, is that going to be more of like an EP or like a full album?
Well, initially it was going to be an EP, but it's now turned into 9 songs, and
it's more like an album.
It's more like an album. I reckon it's going to be like an album or a mixtape. Kind of just depends on a few things that happen this year, but I'm going to release 2 or 3 singles off of it and go from there, basically.
So it's interesting when I always talk to people about your influences. You've already kind of name checked them, but did you want to talk more about any influences or reference points in your music?
I mean, I'm so influenced by so many things. So it's like when I was a child, as I mentioned, I was, part of a choir, part of an orchestra. So I've got that kind of like classical, at least basic classical training, So there's always elements of like classical music or the kind of unexpected turns of classical music that comes into my stuff. So that's something that definitely comes up. I mean, just a lot of the kind of greats, Nina Simone, Tracy Chapman, all that kind of like emotion and like revolution vibe. I'm all for that. Etta James, just love her voice. I mean, more, and like Frank Zappa, all that kind of weird stuff, you know.
Oh yeah,
Oh my god.
Zappa and Funkadelic are kind of in the same vein.
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
always going back to the mothers of invention, or going back to Funkadelic, and pulling a lot of stuff like Bernie Worrell. I'm a keyboardist, so Bernie Worrell is like my hero. He's like the main keyboardist.
Yeah.
And he was classically trained too, and a lot of people don't realize.
Really?
Like,
see, I don't know him or know that, but it makes sense now you're saying it.
Yeah, he was the primary keyboard and arranger for a lot of the Funkadelic, really Parliament deep tracks. And if you've listened to Parliament Funkadelic, they've got this kind of jazz sensibility. And you wonder, how did they get like that? It was because they have like a musical director who's their keyboardist that was trained at Berklee. So he actually, even though there's funky and kind of spaced out, they had like some grounding in theory, so that's why it sounds the way it does. But it's always interesting. But you were talking about the classical, and I think that's always interesting because classical music, you can have the key changes, and you can have the rhythmic rhythms and all the different kind of movements in music.
Yeah.
So do you like to like introduce those type of concepts into your music?
Yeah, there's definitely elements of that, 100%. I mean, it's something that fascinates me with classical music and jazz music specifically. Like, I remember reading something, I don't remember where it was, but something about how both them types of music, like, they create new synapses in your brain literally by you just not expecting what is going to come next, if that makes sense. So like when you listen to a lot of like mainstream music or pop songs, like you kind of know what's going to come next, right? Or you can kind of like almost say the melody before it happens, because it's, as you were saying, like it doesn't go outside the box. But exactly what you're saying, you can change the key. There's more like scope to change the key or like change the rhythm, or suddenly just take you somewhere totally different, which I love about both them types of music. And yeah, there's definitely elements of that within my stuff. I'm trying to since I started making music kind of more seriously and realized that actually it's something I want to do, I don't know, I'm quite aware of like, I've got a lot of kind of underground music influences, but I'm also aware that I want to bring these underground things into the mainstream in order to actually have a platform to kind of both talk about and put out the music that I want to put out from, and combine the two, if that makes sense.
Well, I think what's good is that you have to kind of make your mark. And, there's a lot of music out today where people are kind of clones of like, they go and do they do a Fruity Loop, or you get out there and everybody's using the same loop. Everybody's using the same 808 kick.
100%.
And I was like, okay, well, everybody's doing that. And so I'll kind of go back and I was like, okay, well, I'll go use like something unexpected.
Yeah.
Like you'll sample like a field recording and make that your kick.
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. Like, I love all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's kind of like how you get to like the old school guys, like that I'm into, like the Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Tony Banks. I mean, I have like Moog, so I actually have these big analog modulars, so I'll sit and make my own tones.
Wow.
And so when you do that, no one's gonna you're not copying anything. But it's it's kind of in itself is like the art of like synthesizers. Like I'm a big synthesist, and I kind of just build everything from the building blocks. Yeah. And it's an old style of doing things, and if people are into it or not into it, but like it kind of gives you a differentiation, like classical music or jazz. Yeah. Like if you in your music you suddenly go from 40 BPM to 160 and back to 60, and you have all these kind of movements and stuff. Yeah, it's going to be hard to get that on the radio, but you can get a niche market where people are saying, "Wow, you're doing something different." And so
exactly,
that's kind of how you kind of make your own brand.
Exactly. Well, I'm definitely bringing in little elements of all of that because I love it as well. I think it's important, and it makes it challenges our perceptions ultimately of what we're used to.
So when you write a song as a songwriter and you're working with producers, do you have like your own like home studio DAW that you'll work out like a demo, or do you work with your producer and kind of you do the top lines on what they're doing, or how do you guys work?
So I mean all different kinds of ways. So I have my little home studio. Um, the initial couple of tracks that I took to Mark Fox as my project, if you like, the Ethereal Trap project. I produced them pretty basically in my room and recorded the vocals and then took them to him and he kind of expanded on them. But then there's been other stuff that I'll just write in the room, you know, with people and producers and musicians. If they've got a beat going or something, some instruments being played, I'll write like that. Tracks like both tracks, Access Denied and God Have Your Love, they were both written in the room with Mark Fox and with J. Colo. So, because a lot of my stuff is like what I naturally write is quite deep, quite dark. I go into different aspects of ourselves, the light, the dark, heaven, hell, all these kind of archetypes. And quite raw. That's what I like to write about. So when I started working with both of them and they wanted some house vocals, it really wasn't something that I'd ever done before. So it was kind of like a challenge for me to try and write kind of happy music, if you like, you know.
Yeah.
Something just a bit different. But actually it's been a really amazing journey because it's challenged me to first of all explore different parts of my vocal, because I didn't realize that I could sing in certain ways before I started working with them about a year and a half ago. But also kind of, I don't know, I find as a writer that sometimes, especially when we start kind of maybe writing more seriously, we're quite precious over what we write, you know, and it's like, you know what you've written and you know why you've written it, etc. But working on the housey stuff and on a couple of other collabs more recently as well, it's like I'm starting to feel like, you know, we can always all learn from each other, and it's really good to have input from different people and not to be so precious sometimes over our lyrics or what we want to say,
yeah.
you know, because we can say that somewhere else sometimes, and sometimes, yeah, I'm quite enjoying collaboratively writing recently.
Oh, so I could think about like if you're the like your lyricists probably are kind of personal with with your lyrics. You know, I'm a singer songwriter, so I pretty much write all my stuff. So when I collaborate with another artist, I say I'm going to work on a 50-50 collaboration, and so then there's going to be like my original text is probably going to change compared to if I'm just doing a ghost record. I'm going to pretty much do exactly what I want. But as soon as I do something with somebody else, then suddenly, like, the red pen comes out. And stuff starts getting adjusted. And not that that's bad, but there's some things where, okay, this project, I kind of want it. I know what I want, and I'm pretty much going to do it. And when I work with somebody else, it's like, okay, I'm actually looking for that feedback. So I'm willing to, like, give up some of the control.
Yeah. No, exactly. I feel like with a lot of the collab stuff, so like I've got like this, I went and recorded the other day at Big Jelly Studios in the UK for this artist called Longy, who's just incredible. He's like a kind of rock but soul but gospel, like insane artist. You should definitely check him out. And I went and did some vocals for him, ultimately backing vocals, but you know what I mean, playing around with melodies and things. But his stuff is also quite orchestral and just like, whoa, wow. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I've done some stuff with him, and then I've got another project coming out with a guy called Ray Angry, who's also in New York actually, which I wrote in the studio with him, kind of like exactly as you're saying, giving that feedback and just kind of a bit of back and forth. I think the Ethereal Trap project is really my baby, you know, but the other stuff is like, it's been eye-opening just to like be like, okay, as you say, let go of some of that control sometimes and just explore different things that you wouldn't necessarily do on your own, you know?
Do you find that because of what's going on with COVID, you're doing a lot of like international or collaboration with artists that maybe you wouldn't have worked with before to like, still be working? I've been talking to a lot of artists in the
Yeah.
last year, and they started to work with people they maybe weren't going to do that, but because they kind of everybody's in their own
Yeah.
studio with their DAW, and it's like, okay, how am I going to shake it up? Well, I'll go work with somebody that I didn't think I was ever going to work with, and try something different. And I think that's how a lot of artists move forward, but it's also giving them something to
100%.
work on.
I mean, for me, I think everyone I've mentioned so far is people that I kind of planned to work with for quite a long time pre-COVID. For me, it's just been a really good time to just kind of sit with myself and start producing stuff myself. Okay, it's not like going to be radio worthy, but like, you know what I mean, understand. I've just had the time and the space to explore different things. I mean, even this whole ethereal trap thing, like I started rapping literally at the beginning of lockdown. I've been a spoken word artist for quite a while, so I've had like and poetry since I was a kid, so I've got a background in it to kind of be a foundation for me to be able to get into rapping. But ultimately this whole project has been born from lockdown. If it wasn't for lockdown, I just wouldn't have had the time.
You wouldn't have the time.
No,
space
it wouldn't
to
have
do
happened. Or it would have maybe, but in a different way,
Are you finding that a lot of artists I've talked to have said that they've been able to refine their own home studio production capability just because they aren't touring, they're not out there, and they've actually had time to get into their Ableton or their Pro Tools in their DAW, and because they can't get to the studio like they used to, they started diving into more music production, and because it was kind of a necessity to get the demos out or even try to get stuff out. Have you been doing more of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I started rapping at the beginning of the beginning of our lockdown here in London. But with that, I also started trying to make beats, because I was like, okay, I was really trying to refine my sound and find what my sound was, because I was writing a lot of kind of like ballady things and like cool stuff that I liked, but I realized like actually I wouldn't listen to any of this, if that makes sense. I was like, would I actually listen to any of this? No. Like if I wanted to listen, like I'd rather create something that's like, whatever happens, I think it's badass and I like it, and I don't care if other people don't like it. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like I love it. Anyway, part of that was like, okay, I love rap music as one of the aspects of music that I like. And anyway, so I definitely think I've put more time into, not so much into the production, because literally the first couple of ones that I did, I took to Mark Fox, and his capabilities are just so much better than mine. I've just been really blessed to have kind of formed that creative relationship with him. We just bounce off each other so well, and he kind of creates everything that I envision, and now we've got a bit of a recipe going on. He kind of gets what I want. But I think for me it's definitely been more about developing my writing, my kind of rhythm and flow and all that kind of stuff, and my vocals, and just like getting better as a kind of studio recording artist as opposed to the production side.
What type of DAW do you use?
What type of what, sorry?
DAW or digital audio workstation, like a Pro Tools or Ableton.
See, I'm not super literate on all this. I use Logic. Yeah.
Logic, yeah, that's what I meant. So it's interesting. So I've always talked to vocalists, and a lot of people like they're like a guitar player or a piano player. They don't seem to realize like being a vocalist, that's your instrument, and so refining your vocals, there's a lot you can do, especially with modern music, with the overdubs and all the the overlays 100%. That you can do, especially when you're into hip hop. There's a lot of work that actually done with all the backing tracks and all the different things that you can do with production. But just the whole idea of hip hop, if you listen to it in rap, it's always had like that multi-track composition. And there's a lot of stuff going on. So is that what you've been refining, because you're getting heavier into that is like your delivery and how that gets
Yeah, I
produced.
mean, yeah, a lot of it has been that, you know, refining delivery with the rap stuff, kind of exploring different vocal ranges. Like I said, about it wasn't that long before lockdown, I think, when I did my first session with the boys with the house music stuff. But I feel like in the last kind of year, it's my vocals have just gone to the next level. I mean, there's so many levels to it. It's like you say, with the rap stuff, yeah, there's a lot of double tracking. There's a lot of, you know, there's room to do funky little backing vocals that are sung or whatever. There's so much space to do things. And, you know, saying things in different ways and all of that and all the layers. It's just the possibilities are endless. But I think also vocally as a singer, I've learned to use my instrument better, I think.
Do you find that being a poet, that it makes it easier to get into like rap and spoke, you know, because poets, you know, if you're already writing in that style, I think poetry probably translates easier into rap than maybe into traditional song structures. If you're a poet, you know, you can kind of have like a beat poetry can translate pretty easily into rap.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting transition for me, I think, because I think I kind of had a vague idea in my head that I wanted to, at some point, rap or try and do some of this poetry stuff over music. But where I got so used to writing songs, and where I've always written songs, or at least from a young age, regardless of the kind of time off I had in between, like, that kind of flowed easier for me. But I don't know, for me, and like I say to a lot of people who want to get into rapping and spoken word now, because people ask me, you know, how to get into it, or how many hours they need to put into it and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's like just put on a beat and just try and, you know, just got to try and write with the beat.
Do you find that you end up doing like a lot of kind of, I guess, stream of consciousness? Like a lot of, like I'm a big fan of Lou Reed and like Bob Dylan, and they're kind of like the original kind of spoken word artists. And what's cool about, if you think about like Lou Reed and Bob, is it's very literate, but it feels like it's like effortless, right? And so they kind of just telling these stories and it just flows, and it's very verbose and there's a lot to it. And it seemed like that was always like my inspiration when I first got into music, was like really the Velvet Underground and Dylan.
Yeah.
And it's like if I can get, you know, like 1/100th of that into what I write, that'll get me on the right path. But that was kind of like my goal, was like, okay, I love all this Dylan stuff, I love all this Lou Reed stuff, so let me kind of think in that headspace and see if I can construct things that are anywhere near that.
Of course. I mean, I think for me also, I mean, I think initially when I started writing again, it was like a bit of a form of therapy, you know, just to get stuff out and, I don't know, just kind of go with it and channel it, if you like you said about stream of consciousness. Like, I definitely feel like sometimes when you sit down, it's just something just comes and it flows and it's just like, okay. But I also love all that kind of storytelling aspect of writing and taking people on a journey, but effortlessly, like you say.
Yeah, because I guess you wonder, like, when you're writing stuff like this, people always ask me, like, oh, when you're a songwriter, do you actually like outline it out? Do you actually pre-work on it? And I would honestly say, like, most of my songs are kind of stream of consciousness, and they kind of just like experiments. And I might go back to something I did 6 months ago and then look at it and then take something I wrote 2 days ago and then something I wrote right now, and then kind of just scramble it up, and it's like, well, that ends up being it. And it's just kind of like my big library. I was watching this documentary on Frank Zappa, and Zappa used to just record like everything, and he had this big tape library, and his wife was saying he would just take the splices in the living room and kind of they cut them and paste them together. and then say,
Yeah.
well, that becomes the song. And he would just like, and it was a lot of it was just like, okay, I did this, I did that, and let me kind of take what I've done in this big library of
Yeah.
all this stuff I do, and create something
100%.
new.
Yeah.
And it seems like that seems to work better than when I try to actively construct something. I was like, well, it's better if it kind of haphazard, which a lot of people would say, well, that doesn't seem like you're being that thoughtful. I'm like, well, it's kind of like the creative process. It kind of comes wherever the music's gonna send
100%. It's a bit of a spiral. It sends you round in circles, upside down, and then sometimes you get back where you started. But it's good. It's good. I'm the same. I mean, sometimes things just flow and you've got a whole song there. Sometimes, I mean, what will probably be the first track on the album or the mixtape or whatever comes out as the full project, the lyrics are actually the first song I wrote in 2015 after not writing for like 13 years. But just with a whole new melody and a whole new vibe, So it's like, I think, yeah, as artists, as well, we do just kind of go back and revisit sometimes, and that's okay. And it's been interesting for me with the rap stuff though, because I think getting into different flows and different rhythms and kind of trying to write to beats and that whole process, like some of it comes out and it's very easy and it flows and I've got 32 bars and I love it, it's banging. But other times it's like it takes me longer to actually think about what I'm actually saying. You've got a short time in rap to say something, but a longer time in the sense that you can fit more words in. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to make a quick impact, but you got a lot of space to say a lot of things. So I find it, I have to like kind of ground myself sometimes and be like, okay, what are you actually trying to say here? And construct it a bit more with the rap, I think. But with songs, I don't know, it just seems to flow quite easily.
Yeah, I find it's interesting when I'm playing with my vocals, I end up going through all these different mics. And I say, okay, well, I can use this,
Yeah.
I can use this mic, that mic. And then it's like, and it changes, like you kind of get into the recording engineering aspect of it based on the kind of mic you're using. It can totally change the mood of the song. And then it's like, and then if I hear the vocal being processed through a different microphone capability, I'm like, oh, now I might go back and change the whole thing. Because then it's like, now I heard what I
oh my
really
gosh, I just
want.
love it.
And suddenly, like, I heard, and then like, oh, now I heard what I wanted. Now I'm gonna redo everything because I just heard what I was trying to do. And now
I mean, a lot of stuff happens by accident. It's like, I don't know, especially for me, once I started looking into like loops and producing, and just because I was very much fixed on I want everything to be live instruments for years, like whatever I was going to do is my kind of main project, and playing guitar and playing keyboards and wanting to get other musicians involved. And then obviously coronavirus happened and we're all at home, and I was like, okay, I need to like venture out of that idea a bit and like explore other options. But when you're looking through samples and you're looking through loops, you might have an idea of what you want, but ultimately you're going to find something random that you don't really necessarily know you were looking for. And similarly with what you're saying about mics, like I think there's 2 tracks of the album which were recorded just with like a really old pair of iPhone headphones, that I was basically just trying to get the demo down of the vocal. But afterwards, it's like we tried re-recording, and it just lost like the actual kind of vibe and the feel and that gritty, slightly radio sound that was just like, why am I trying to recreate something that's already banging? So we're using the original vocals, in the end.
That's funny because I was talking to some artists, and artists tend to do this thing where you'll do all these like, takes of your song, right? And what I found when I was talking to some producers, like the further you get away from the original demo, the less honest it becomes, because the honesty is actually in the first couple versions, and then you start maybe getting scared of what you said or changing what you said, and then it doesn't have the original intention. And sometimes even if the quality or if there's a glitch in that first couple of tracks, it might be worth using it and just live with it. I found a lot of people will say that, and they're like, it's actually sometimes better to use
100%.
the
I've
earlier
definitely learned that. I mean, we've got tracks that we were kind of like, okay, well, let's just get that vocal down and then build the track around it. And then it's like, now listening to stuff as a more kind of like, as it's developing and becoming more and more finished, it's like, I'm like, I don't want to change that vocal because even though there's that little clip or there's that little bit that's a bit, I feel like I could do it better. Like when I listen to music, I love hearing that raw vibe, like sometimes it's your favorite bit of the song that was possibly a mistake, or that something goes a bit weird or whatever, or the voice breaks or whatever happened. It's like, actually that's the magic and that's the moment and that's the feeling. So yeah, I'm definitely keeping that in.
I mean, if you listen to if you listen to a guy like Keith Richards, right, and his kind of imprecise, kind of sloppy, off the beat, that's what the Stones are, right? If you try to play that perfect, you'll wreck it. I mean, it's kind of like Keith Richards is like the epitome of this kind of ramshackle kind of style, but it is the style. And if you try to play like a modern perfection style,
it just wouldn't work.
It doesn't work. It's kind of like Neil Young's voice, like on Tonight's the Night, is glitchy. It hits notes he probably didn't want to hit. He kind of, and you could say, well, you could try to clean that up, but that destroys the honesty of the recording. It's kind of like what happened with Kurt Cobain. When Kurt Cobain came on the scene, it's only like honesty came back into music because he was very honest in his approach and his delivery. And then everybody else was like, oh, how can I get that? It was grunge, because it's kind of imprecise. It's punk. It's kind of like not perfection, not hair band. It's not Motley Crue. It's not Poison. It's something that more goes back to the Clash or the Sex Pistols. And that's why I always find is like this punk aesthetic, whether you're electronic or EDM, or this kind of honesty in music that a folk singer like a Neil Young or a Dylan kind of brings to something. It's always good to kind of take some of those things and put them into your music.
Well, I definitely, an ex-manager of mine said that you definitely got a punk heart. That's what he said. And it was interesting. It was like the first time I met him, and he didn't really know anything about my kind of, like my dad being into punk rock and whatever. But it's just so true. I think there's definitely an element of like rebellion and that kind of punk vibe and that kind of like, it's a bit of a mess, but it's how it's supposed to be kind of vibe about all my stuff, actually, up and coming. But I love that. I think it's just raw. It's more raw. It's more real. It's more honest.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of the reason I don't tend to use a DAW when I do electronic music. I use a lot of kind of glitchy, analog, kind of point and stuff. A lot of my synths cannot replicate on purpose the sound they do from yesterday to today. They like every time I turn them on,
your studio sounds fun.
And it's kind of like what I like to do, and it's like I purposely go get devices that actually create kind of glitched, out of tune, distorted weirdness, and that to me is like, you think about like Trent Reznor and Alexander Cortini. He's one of the guys in Nine Inch Nails. They use a lot of like sound devices that create dissonance, which is like kind of off key stuff, and that's the kind of core of having that kind of realism. And it can be very expansive. It uses noise in ways that people would say, well, you should EQ that noise out. But it's the noise is actually part of what we're trying to do.
When people do that, that's normally my trigger for like, okay, well, I'm going to do it. Well, I'm definitely doing it.
Definitely got to do it.
I'm going to break all the rules. Sorry.
Yeah, it's that punk aesthetic, which I think is very good for music. I think, when the Sex Pistols and the Clash showed up on the scene, it kind of gave rock a kick in the pants. Pete Townsend said that when the Clash came about, he was like, he didn't know what to do. He suddenly felt like he had to change everything he was doing. and it gave him the kind of kick in the rear that he needed to kind of go where he needed to go. And I think you're always looking for that next thing, you know, and punk was that thing that in every age you get like a, you know, you get bands like Nirvana, or, you know, that comes along and kind of changes the rules and gets everybody like, oh wow, we should maybe go back to basics. And I, you know, and I'm always looking for that next band to do that. And I talk to bands all the time trying to find bands like that, but
you never know.
But it's interesting. Yeah. So what are your plans for, like, in Corona? Is everything just going to be online, or are you guys able to do shows virtually or physical? So, like, what's the plan?
The 2021 plan is I want to get some videos done. For me, it's very much, I mean, before I did music, I did film and theatre, a lot of that kind of art stuff. So I'm very much wanting to create something that has a kind of strong visual also, as well as the music side. Obviously, right now we're restricted by, we can't really do shows. So I'm kind of just leaving that for now, but starting to rehearse with some different musicians as things ease up over here anyway. That's the plan. To do some kind of cool live streams in some various venues. But mainly I just want to focus on getting a few banging videos that get my message across and releasing a few tracks independently and kind of just see where that takes me. I've got quite a few different kind of various platforms that showcase like rappers or up and coming singers that I'm going to be working with and doing some stuff with them as I start to release.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, it's just such a weird time, isn't it? It's hard to make any plans, but I think ultimately for me this year, it's just start to release this stuff, you know? It's been about 5 years in the making, so start releasing things and get some good visuals together. That's my plan, and kind of see how people receive it, you know?
How is vinyl looked at where you guys are? Like in the US, there's like this big vinyl revolution, like where a lot of bands, like, you put everything out on a streaming service, but your hardcore fans are actually are willing to buy like $30,
I will
$50
definitely have
vinyls. And if you can put out stuff like you're thinking that you would be able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, just because I think it's a lovely thing to have to have and to do, and it's like a physical thing, isn't it? I think it's like you say, like the kind of hardcore fans want to have something, like, as much as these streaming services are all pretty, you know, it's amazing, they're very accessible, you've got everything in one place now. I think nothing quite beats a physical thing.
But I think people do like that. The experience of vinyl. Like, I actually started getting into vinyl again and found this whole world of all this vinyl equipment that's just as crazy as some of my synth equipment. I mean, like tube amplifiers for your vinyl, crazy magnet cartridges that are like crazy insane, and then just just the level of detail and what you can actually hear in the sound. And so there's a lot of audiophiles that are like, they want that your music in that way. And then also, when you're an artist, when you have a project, vinyl lets you do like the liner notes, the photography, the art. So when you have your project and you put out a record, you actually can put it becomes like a full art project. You know, it's not just the record, it's actually all the art and stuff that goes with it.
I think that's definitely kind of what I'm aiming to create. And I mean, the same here. We've had like a bit of a vinyl revolution and a lot of people getting back into vinyl, whether it's DJs or just to play in your home, you know. And go on, sorry.
But I think what's good about vinyl also is it gets the fan to focus on your full project compared to like a Spotify playlist. You're 1 out of 20 artists on that playlist, and then maybe they forget about you. But if the fan buys a vinyl, they're actually listening to your full complete concept, and then are more likely to like stick with you with other things you're going to do, because you're not just 1 to 20 on the next playlist. That they become a higher chance they're going to become a fan and stay with you.
Come to our show in 2025. Like, pray not.
buy your merch, buy your t-shirt, buy your buttons, buy your posters, you know, and just become like a total like into the. To me, because I grew up with, you know, if I got into a band, I went and got the t-shirt, I got the poster, I got this, and I like that. I kind of like that, you know, and it seems like that's gone away for some fans, but then there are other fans that, and it seems like it's weird that the vinyl revolution also allows you to have a smaller batch. I mean, you could have a batch of like 1,000 vinyls and make more money than you make on your Spotify.
Like Spotify is like, you know, unless you're getting millions and millions of streams, you're not really making any money off Spotify. So literally,
you can make more money on 1,000 vinyls. But the Spotify is kind of like the radio. It's your promotion to get people to know who you are, and then you convert them to buy your vinyl, you know, and you convert them to buy your t-shirt. And that's where you actually make the money. You know, and that's kind of weird in the industry now. Like, the primary way people hear music is not the way you make your money. You make your money off the ticket sales, the merch, the merchandising, working with other people, producing other people. It just, you have to kind of be a full, like, your full vision of an artist. You have to like this part of it streaming, and then the rest of it's something else.
Crazy thing to navigate, especially now with everything going on. But I'm just kind of just trying to focus on the art ultimately.
Yeah. So, are you feeling really positive about 2021 compared to 2020? I know 2020 kind of hit all the artists like a sledgehammer and like dead stop. Like, you know, a lot of artists, like I finally got a booking agent. I was supposed to come to Europe, and then that was boom. And so it's like, oh, that got stopped. So, you know, so you're like everything, you know, that was, I'm kind of say good in the mirror, that 2020 is in the mirror, and like 2021, everybody's trying to figure something else out. But are you feeling in a better place than, you know, maybe 2020?
I had a bit of a when it started about to shoot a video and release some of these dance tracks that I'd done with J. Colo. And we had so many things lined up. We literally had gigs all that week. We had this music video production team. We'd put loads of money into it. Anyway, 3 days into what was supposed to be like 6 or 7 months being over there, we found out that we had to leave. And obviously Spain was closing the borders and et cetera, which was obviously crazy at the time to try and comprehend and understand. But for me, 2020... after that kind of initial shock, and obviously I'm aware of everything going on in the world, and it's been a heavy year, but for me it was actually a really good year, just because I think I'm such an active person. I'm always on the move, and obviously I do music, but to make money over the years I've been doing VIP hospitality stuff, so I'd always be working and doing like late nights and then trying to fit in my studio time and all this kind of stuff. So for me, just to be able to like actually rest and actually think about what I was doing musically and ultimately create this album that's coming out 2020 was a great year for me in those aspects. 2021, however, I mean, I am definitely more optimistic about this year in terms of, I think, you know, we made it through the kind of initial shock of last year. We all kind of know the situation now to a degree, and I think we've just got to kind of make the most of it and find new ways of doing things. And yeah, I'm just trying to stay positive and keep busy, really, keep working. And now I've got a project to put out, so it's hopefully going to be a good year for me.
Well, I think that's like that's very interesting because a lot of the artists I talked to, they did try to
Yeah,
pull what they could out of last year, and most of them did have their opinion where they were
yeah,
able to have the space to work on their art in a way that the business usually doesn't allow us to do that, and we kind of sneak little,
yeah.
2 weeks here, 1 week here to actually work on something, where we actually had like a clear space to really think about our art. And I think
I'm
that
so
has actually
excited to
created a
hear what
lot of good
everyone's
work.
been creating. I
And
genuinely think
I
the next few years are going to be pretty epic for music and art.
yeah, I mean, I've gotten previews from some bands I've been talking to about stuff that's coming out in 2021 from the artists I talked to last
Yeah.
year that were doing the same thing as you. They were working on it, and a lot of the stuff is like deeper in terms of the content and just the reach. And I think people
Always,
take
yeah.
what's going on and they put it into their art. And artists, from movie directors to actors to all types of artists, I think took all that input, and I think
Yeah.
we're in for a really good time, a good era, and great music. I think that's what we all have looking forward is like a great music experience. That's got to get to a place where all of us can actually, you know, earn what we deserve
Yeah,
for it.
no, I mean, I think so.
But
I agree with you.
so I'm happy that you came on the show. Like I said, I don't know if you heard, we
Yeah.
are on 11 platforms, including Spotify and Apple and Google. And what happens is after this podcast is over, I edit it, and then within an hour, it's going to start appearing on all these
Awesome.
podcast platforms. I will send you the link to Apple, Spotify, and Anchor. It will be on like the other ones, as I said, over the next day. And so like we will push it on our Instagram channel. And one thing with Instagram, it has an integration with the Spotify version of the podcast.
Yeah.
So once I create a story or an outline highlight, it will go to the Spotify version. So if people click on that, they can get it right from your Instagram. And
Very
I'll create
cool,
a story
darling.
that
This
sets
is
that
the
up,
good things of technology
and then
and
you can use
all
it.
this stuff.
Yeah, the one cool use of this stuff.
Thanks so
So
much for
great to
having
have you
me.
on the line, Jazzy Series. We're gonna have everyone check out your Linktree, though. Your new album will be coming out as soon as your new material comes out. Give us a ring, and we could definitely do like an album release show. We've done that for a lot of artists. If you want to coordinate it, so like right around the time it comes out, we talk about it and kind of premiere it. We could do that.
Thank you so much.
And well, thank you for being on the show.
It's 7 o'clock.
Have a great.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some dinner and get on some music. Lovely talking to you. Have a lovely evening. Yeah, I'll speak soon.
Okay, we'll talk to you again.